Welcome to Cyberbytes, the podcast. I'm Oliver Legg, co-founder of Asperon Search, and today you welcome Jessica Crytzer, CRO of Series A security vendor LimaCharlie. Jessica walks us through the challenges she faced as a female sales professional, rising the ranks through an organization, onto some of the unique ways her team at LimaCharlie are innovating her sales process to sell a complex security product. Enjoy the show. Well, it's an absolute pleasure at long last to welcome Jessica Crytzer, CRO of Series A security vendor LimaCharlie. How's things, Jessica?
Things are great, Oliver. Looking forward to this episode for sure. Just got back from South by Southwest and feeling energized.
Yeah, awesome. Well, this is a very long-awaited episode. Should have happened, in person back at Black Hat Vegas, but you stood me up. But here we are, many reschedules later. So
I did. Thank you for the patience, for sure.
All good. How was the conference then last week? First time you've been to this one, so would you go again?
Yeah, so first time, and I wish I would have consulted folks who had been there in the past. I bought a badge. That is a rookie mistake. Very difficult to get into the events, but there were a number of free events that you did not need a badge for, where I was able to meet a lot of really interesting people. So I would recommend it without a badge, and I would also say plot your plan before you go. So know what you're going to do and have a plan. But yeah, it was really interesting. Such a diverse group of people. You've got film, you've got tech, music. So yeah, it's definitely something I would return to.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, we're the more conferences we do, we're slowly kind of realizing how to approach each one, and the way you approach one is completely different to how you should go about the others. So yeah, it's a trial and an error to get it all right.
Absolutely.
Well, we're pretty. I mean, but when this goes live as well, I mean, we're fairly fresh off you and Matt announcing your own podcast as well. So why don't you kind of start by telling the people who aren't aware of who you are a bit about yourself, and then tie that in with a bit about your Cyber on the Edge podcast as well?
Perfect. Yeah. So I've been with LimaCharlie now about 2 years. Prior to that, I was at two other startups. One was Hypercube, another was Threat Switch. Both have exited, and I have been in InfoSec for quite some time. I won't say the number of years. So I don't want to age myself, but a long time, and have watched the industry evolve and grow, and really do love this industry deeply. And when I was looking for my new next adventure, I was thinking about looking at a new industry. And the reason for that really comes down to the fact that there are so many companies in cyber who are trying to do something 10 to 15% better. And as a startup, that is a challenge I didn't want to take on. It's hard enough, as some folks listening might know, to build a company and build a go-to-market motion for an early stage company. And then I met the folks at LimaCharlie and recognized what they were doing was pretty revolutionary and really different, and decided that I was not going to, in fact, leave cyber, but join LimaCharlie and build out their go-to-market function. And it's been an incredible 2 years. And in joining LimaCharlie, I've had the pleasure of meeting a ton of very interesting founders who are doing things differently. And we always talk about, these founders and I and other folks on my team always talk about how we're doing something differently. We should really start this group or coalition or have this event, and it never comes to fruition. So a few months back, I had this kind of a light bulb moment where I had another conversation again about this group, and realized this is really going nowhere. What can I do? And so the intent behind the podcast, Cyber on the Edge, is to highlight these founders that are doing really cool things in cybersecurity, learn about the tech a little bit, but more so learn about their journey, what prompted them to start this company, what problem they're solving, and hopefully inspire other people who are maybe on the fence or thinking about starting a company On the other side of the house is, most early stage cyber companies, they want to know how to talk to a CISO. How do I get a CISO's attention? And so the other types of episodes we actually interview CISOs and learn about their journey. As you know, it's a relatively new role, and people didn't go to college thinking, hey, I'm going to be a CISO. So learning about the unique and different paths that folks have taken to become a CISO, and then also digging into, if they're open to talking to early stage companies. If yes, why, and what does that look like? And if no, what can folks do to better position themselves? So it's been a really fun time so far.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I've listened to the first, I haven't listened to the most recent one. I watched the first one, which was great. And also learned from your kind of launch episode that your personal sales career started all the way back in kind of photocopier sales as well. So kind of starting with you, bring us kind of way back into how your sales journey started, and then what eventually led you to being one of the kind of sadly few female CROs in the cybersecurity vendor ecosystem.
Yeah, absolutely. So sales was an accident. It was going to go to law school, decided that was not for me. And coming out in the early 2000s of undergrad with a communications and pre-law degree, it was tough. There weren't a lot of jobs out there. Everyone was trying to get in the pharmaceutical industry, and I couldn't even get an interview. And I was clawing and scraping and dropping my resume off, and ended up getting an interview with a copier company, and thought, this sounds terrible. But it ended up being really, incredible. The team, the way they build the teams, the training was really encouraging. You're in a bullpen, literally. And I'm talking back in the days where we would walk door to door, knocking on businesses' doors, getting business cards. So think horse and carriages, right? And ended up doing very well at that somehow, and got promoted to move out to the Bay Area and take on a large national account. And from there, I was recruited to a company called Iron Mountain, and that was kind of my first job in information security, offsite data backup, protection, disaster recovery, all of the things in the early days. And also shredding was a component of it, because there was a lot of breaches happening back in the early days of people stealing things like receipts out of trash cans and then using people's credit card information. So it really piqued my interest, and I remember back then people saying to me, what are you doing? This job sounds so boring and not interesting, and there's so many other things that you could do. But I really fell in love with it. And so that's kind of what kicked off my career. And I still talk to my first director there. We've become really great friends, and I thank him all the time for that opportunity, because it launched my career into cyber. Well, what is cyber today? And so, from Iron Mountain, I had a lot of different individual contributor roles at larger companies. And funny enough, if you would have asked me then, did I want to be in leadership? The answer would have likely been absolutely not. I'm going to keep selling forever. And
because of the grief that you were giving your leadership at the time, you're thinking, oh, I could never deal with a rep like Jessica to manage.
Absolutely. I mean, I was always over quota, but I was always the one that was getting the why is your Salesforce not updated? And now I'm that person, which it's hard to swallow some days. But yeah, and I just thought, being an individual contributor was where I wanted to stay. But as I grew in my career and I started to kind of be pushed into leadership a bit, I realized that it was really something that I enjoyed even more. Being able to build teams, encourage people, mentor them, help them grow their career, and be able to be a part of a different type of discussion and organization is something that really drove me. Now, clearly I made a pivot from the big organizations to startups at some point in my life. And that probably comes back to I grew up with an entrepreneurial father. He owned multiple businesses, and I really saw the hard work that went into that, and the way he was able to pivot and make changes, and also the way that would pay off for him. And I made a decision, gosh, about 8 years ago now, to look at these early stage companies, because big companies are great, but they have things figured out for the most part. I found myself wanting to be a part of the strategic conversation, or help change messaging and shape marketing, and that's not as possible in a large organization where you have teams of 20 to hundreds of people managing all of that. And so I kind of had to look inward and say, this is risky, but I think I want to go build teams at early stage companies and be a part of building that foundation. So that is what led me to where I am today.
Yeah, yeah, awesome. And what were the challenges when it came to that pivot? Because you spoke about the reasons why you were attracted to going earlier stage, in terms of the reward and the kind of ability to leverage and influence change. But what were some of the kind of not so shiny aspects of the reality of making that move?
Oh, wow. That list is long. It's a risk. So you're leaving the comfort of a big organization, and that safety net is not only the safety net of the company itself being strong and resilient. You're leaving that multiple person, multiple team organization in marketing and sales and support and customer service, customer success, all of the different components that you have in a big organization that you can rely on are gone. You become that person. And you either thrive in that environment or you crumble. And there's not a right way or a wrong way to look at your career. But I challenge anybody who wants to be in an early stage company, if they've already been in a large company, to think about going to work and not having the marketing team to call if you need something, or have an entire support team dedicated and an account manager, and a whole team to do whatever the task is that you need assistance with, and think about the fact that that now lies on your shoulders. And if that's appealing to you, then I think it's something to consider. And if it's not appealing, and if it's scary, I would say maybe rethink it. You're also taking a risk on if this company is going to grow. Are they going to be able to achieve what they're setting out to do? I mean, the percentage of companies that fail is much higher than the percentage of companies who succeed. So going into it knowing that there's high probability that this company might not do what they're setting out to do, and being okay with that and being resilient. The other thing that you lose, brand recognition. If I'm selling for a well-known org that's in 95% of the Fortune everything, it's much easier to make a sales call as an employee of one of those organizations than a company where folks don't even know who you are. Sales is hard enough, but building trust as an unknown vendor is even more challenging than it is in a typical organization. So there are a lot of not challenges, but risks that you take when you join an early stage company. But in my opinion, the rewards and the wins are so much bigger and so much sweeter in an early stage company, and really being a part of building that strategy and finding what works. To me, it drives me.
Pays it off. And there's a whole kind of later kind of part to what you were saying about the brand recognition as well, and especially we'll come on to LimaCharlie shortly, but it's the companies like what you're doing at the moment, where you're actually forging a new kind of domain or a new category. You're not just new out the box EDR tool or a new SIM. It's you're not just trying to create your own brand, you're actually trying to educate on, oh, we have this problem and oh yeah, we do need to solve it. So it's creating that all as part of it as well. And I mean, when it comes to the security, I mean, practitioner security and the vendor landscape, there is still a big lack of female leaders when it comes to sales in particular. There's other areas where I would say, I mean, marketing, for example, I would definitely say that CMO and VP of marketing positions, it is much more even, if not more heavily weighted towards female leaders. But when it comes to sales, I mean, I know a small handful of female CROs at cybersecurity vendors. What's been your challenge in kind of facing that, climbing up the ranks to the position you're in at the moment? And was that kind of a bit of an underlying driver for you to get to that top spot once you set your heart on leadership?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I would say it's certainly a driver for me. I like to break odds and be the in a small percentage of folks. And coming into InfoSec, even when it was as simple as offsite data protection and all of that, I was typically the only female in the room. I'm selling into boardrooms of the CIO, CEO, CFO, and then there's me. And so I've faced that challenge in, since the early days of my career, where I feel that not so much anymore, but in my early days of my career, I really had to prove myself even more. I would walk in a room and you could tell the response was, what is she doing here? And did they send, I hate to use this term, but did they send in a booth babe? And I felt like I had to do a lot more work to prove myself and my value early on, to show that I am a valuable asset to the organization. I understand what I'm talking about. I'm not just somebody they sent in, into the room, right? But once you overcome that, it almost becomes empowering. Mm-hmm. And when it happens today, which is a lot, less frequent than in the early days of my career, it almost lights a fire inside of me. If I can see that somebody's underestimating me, I'm like, oh wow, this is going to be fun. And I would encourage other women out there to try to harness that energy in a way that you can really show them that they're wrong. And that's been, I think, what's driven me, what's made me very successful, is knowing my craft very well, knowing, all of the information, doing all of the research I need to do, but also knowing what I'm selling and the value it adds better than some people, right? And being in sales, I almost hate to say this, but there are a lot of bad salespeople out there, right? And so I was very sure of myself that I was going to be the salesperson that people wanted to talk to early on in my career. And now I want to build the team of people that people want to talk to, that know what they're talking about and bring value and really deserve that seat at the table. And I learned very early on too, that you can't be intimidated. Even if somebody is, you can feel the energy that they don't trust you, or they think that, you might not be smart enough to have the conversation, not backing down and being on the level of whoever you're in the room with, because the reality is you probably know more about your company than they do, right? So no matter how you feel, you're there to educate them, and you are the professional. And so owning that was also really critical to my success, I think.
Yeah, awesome. And you probably didn't look at it this way at the time, but kind of going back to your where you said you were really needing to prove yourself in every meeting, kind of that then requirement to do so much more prep and so much more work than your male counterparts.
it's probably paid off in kind of creating the salesperson that you are today. So yeah, you can look back at that with fondness, I hope.
Absolutely.
So coming on to LimaCharlie, so you've spoken very highly of the team, and you've got the one and only Ross Haliek on your team in your product department as well. What are you guys? Because it's definitely slightly more complex than some traditional out-the-box security operations vendors. So give a kind of high level of what LimaCharlie is actually setting out to achieve.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because it's even difficult to explain, but you kind of alluded to this earlier. We are trying to create a new category of cybersecurity tooling. We call it the SecOps Cloud Platform. We think about cybersecurity a lot the way AWS thought about IT when they came onto the market, that people want to customize what they're doing. And there are a lot of great tools out there that people are using today. But there are also a lot of products that are well understood. And I don't want to use the word commoditized, but almost commoditized at this point, where I don't need to be paying for the big brand name. And some of those types of products are available in LimaCharlie as what we call primitive, similar to AWS, if we're going back to the AWS analogy. So the goal of LimaCharlie is to be your cybersecurity infrastructure. However you use the different pieces within LimaCharlie is really up to the imagination of the user or the organization. And so if I break it down into three kind of main parts of what LimaCharlie does, we ingest telemetry from any source out there. We've got detection, response, and automation and retention on all of that data, and a ton of integrations and things that you can work with within that platform. And then we can output data. So we get labeled with a lot of different acronyms out there, but we really don't fit into one box, which makes us really different. And our customers are typically MSSPs or incident response or any type of cybersecurity service provider, and then enterprises. So definitely not for the dentist shop down the street, because it does take some technical know-how to want to use LimaCharlie.
And the part you said about kind of up to the how the use cases pan out, being up to the imagination of the user, does that itself create a problem with customers fully utilizing what the platform can do?
Absolutely. And it's probably at least once a week that we're talking to a customer and they say, I didn't know it did that. They come in with one thing in mind and they're not looking at the whole platform. So yeah, that's something we're continuing to try to find a way to help customers realize the full potential of it. And we're doing a ton of work up with the marketing team on that today. But it is certainly a challenge. What do I do with this thing? It looks really cool and it looks like I can do a lot. It's either overwhelming to some, or some people only see it for one thing and they're not seeing the whole picture. But that's what we're here to solve.
Yeah, awesome. And so when it comes to your sales org in particular, because I mean, it's essentially been you for the last 2 years. Recently been growing the team out. I know that your kind of strategy has been a lot towards building a really, really solid kind of BDR, SDR function as the foundation. What is your idea behind kind of the rest of the strategy that you're happy to share anyway when it comes to growing the sales org?
Yeah, so the BDR phase is kind of phase 2. So when I came into the team at LimaCharlie, they had achieved a fairly significant revenue number with no sales infrastructure at all. They had nobody doing anything. Everything was PLG, folks showing up on the website and signing up. And that's great. But we knew that there's more that we could do. But I also knew that I have an incredibly technical team with very high integrity that is slightly allergic to sales. is the way I'll put it, right? And so I wanted to be cautious of knowing our customer base and who the thought leaders are who are really behind us. I didn't want to put a team of AEs or ADLs or BDRs out in the world right away. What I first wanted to do was hire some sales engineers who were former incident responders, people who ran MDR companies, and learn more about how we refine that process of what does a demo look like? Who is our ICP for sure? What value do they typically derive? And we spent about a year and change with the SEs. And I've been very thoughtful in how I've built the team, I think, in a lot of ways. The second phase was, okay, let's go outbound. We still had limited outbound. Events were our main source of leads outside of the typical community things we had been doing to drive inbound. And so I've hired, the start of the inside sales team, but I believe in a very thoughtful way. So I'm not, I'm not telling these folks to send 1,000 emails a day. They're incredibly targeted. They have lists of the types of companies that we want to work with or that would be a good fit. And they also, understand the use cases very well. I spend a ton of time with these folks, helping them understand the value, because I think cybersecurity sales, is great, but there's a lot of noise out there, and that's been created by organizations who are really holding on tooth and nail to that spray and pray method. And that might work if you're selling a password manager, but when you're selling something really complex and technical, you have to understand the buyer a lot better and in depth, right? And you need to understand the types of companies where you're a fit and where you're not a fit. And also, we want to keep the LimaCharlie name, strong and in good favor. Meaning, we don't want people to look at LimaCharlie and think, oh God, I got 10 emails from their team last week. That's not the type of brand we want to build. And so I've spent some time now building out that inside sales team, and now we'll add account executives to the team. I also didn't want to bring on account executives that had no leads coming to them, right? So I've been very thoughtful in the approach and the timing, careful not to overhire, but we will always still have a sales engineer involved on calls. We don't even do a first discovery call because it irritates me when it happens to me. And I certainly know that it irritates the cybersecurity buyer when you have to talk to somebody for 30 minutes prior to getting a demo, right? So we've kind of architected the sales process to be different, just the way, in the same way that the company itself is thinking about our approach in a different way.
And is that going down well? Is it kind of being seen as a refreshing sale, ignore the product, but a refreshing sales process in terms of how you and the team are actually approaching it?
Absolutely. I think people appreciate it. Our customers they love us. I was actually speaking to a CISO last week, and he said, I wish more CROs would take the approach that your team has, because I want to run when I see a salesperson, but I enjoy talking to you and your team because you're thoughtful about whose role is what, and you're not setting out to waste my time. And I think that, that message was heard loud and clear. And this was a CISO of a very large organization. So I'm not talking not well-known person. So I think that it's definitely well received, and I think more people will start to approach things this way, slowly but surely. At least that's my hope for the industry.
Well, they will after they've watched this, and they'll think, let's just copy Jessica's go-to-market strategy.
Reach out to me. Happy to share any information. But if you look at LinkedIn, how many posts do you see about people irritated at cybersecurity sales organizations? It's time we listen to that and try to find a better approach. I mean, we have to sell. Everyone knows that. Even the customers that we're selling to, hey, where does their revenue come from? They're salespeople, right? But if we can make the experience more pleasant and really add value, then I think we can shift the stigma a little bit.
Yeah. And you're giving the product an opportunity to shine through, rather than someone potentially being desperate for the product but hating your salesperson or process so much that they never even get to the stage of understanding what it does. So where are we? We're at the coming up to the end of the Q1 2024 calendar year. What's in store for you guys this year?
Oh my, a lot. So we just closed the Series A few months back. So we've been hiring in every part of the organization, and we'll continue to do so. We're adding to the sales team, adding to the marketing team. We've got a lot of conferences coming up: RSA, Black Hat, Blue Team Con. We'll have our own conference at the end of the year called Mission Control. And our focus is to continue to add value to the product and find out from the industry and the market and our customers what they want to see next. But we have a lot of really exciting new features coming out in the next couple of months. We'll actually be hosting an online event in April where we'll be unveiling a lot of these new features, and that will continue to happen throughout the year. So I would say in every way, it's growth and expansion and continuing to do the thing that we all love. So
Fantastic. Well, I'm really looking forward to continuing to follow the journey, and anyone that wants to check out the online event in April, I'll make sure there's a link to Jessica's profile in the show notes, so you can check out all the new LimaCharlie features coming out over 2024. Well, Jessica, thank you so much for coming on. I'm glad we finally managed to kind of get a time in for this, and I'll see you at RSA.
Absolutely. Thank you, Oliver, for the opportunity.
See you later.
All right.
We hope you've enjoyed this latest episode of Cyberbytes, the podcast. Please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and tell your friends. If you want to explore being a guest or how Aspiron Search can help you build high-performing security and go-to-market teams, then get in touch on LinkedIn or info@aspironsearch.com.